Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sephardic Baking. This is the Catherine Sharon Zoom baking series, and I'm very excited to start our pre-Pesach baking series. And we're going to start with the classic Peshcado con Huevo Limon and Peshcado con Tomat. And we're going to have our Sharon Adato, our beloved Sharon Adato, leading that this morning. So Sharon, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So nice to see you, even though I can't see you, but I'm hoping you can see me. First of all, I want to make sure that we have everything straight here. Our dear friend Ike Azos shared with me that it is Peshcado con Huevo y Limon. And I wanted to be sure everybody knew that because I'm the girl from across the street. I grew up Ashkenazic, and but in Seattle, our synagogues are all very close. We have two Sephardic synagogues, and at the time when I was growing up, there was one Ashkenazic synagogue in our neighborhood, and SBH, Sephardic Bikur Cholim, is right across the street from where I grew up, and all our friends hung out together, so we spent a lot of time together. But I'm originally Ashkenazic, and so I said Peshcado con Huevo Limon. I didn't know there was an E in there, but I got it, Ike, and this is for you. We're going to start today with, I'm making two different kinds of fish. One is the Huevo y Limon, which is an egg lemon sauce, and the other is con Tomat, which is a tomato-based fish. We'll start with the Huevo Limon, and while it's cooking, we'll do the Tomat. So here we go. The first thing we do is, I did already this part ahead of time, fresh squeezed lemons. I squeezed about 4 lemons. In my vast experience with Sephardic cooking, the more lemons, the better. And so I always make sure to squeeze a little bit extra. And if you're gonna ask in the chat, can you use bottled lemon juice? I would say you really shouldn't. You can if you're in a pinch, but it will not taste as good as fresh squeezed lemon juice. So I've already pre-squeezed it for you. And then the next thing we do in preparation is we take some Italian parsley, which I have already soaked and washed, and I'm going to chop it up. And I use basically one head of Italian parsley for 1 pan of fish. And so I'm going to cut it up and chop it into real small pieces. And getting it ready for this. And shortly, that's really all I need here. I'm going to make sure it's cut really well. And then, so it doesn't have to be exact every little piece, but this is what it's going to be chopped like. I'm going to take a little bit of olive oil, maybe 2 tablespoons, just a little bit to slightly coat the pan, and turn on the burner. There we go. Turn on the burner, and I'm gonna let the oil coat the bottom of the pan. Let it get just a little bit.
How much oil was that, Sharon?
Pardon me?
How much oil? About
2 tablespoons, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. Could be a little more or it could be a little less, depending on how big your pan is. And mine is a pretty big pan, and it's deep.
What heat? Are you on medium?
I have it on high because I want to do this a little quickly, but you can do it medium to medium high if you want. And then I'm going to put the parsley into the pan and just kind of stir it around a little bit. And I'm really just going to let it cook here for just a minute, just so that the parsley is slightly soft. And while it's doing its thing, I'm going to show you the fish. I have cut the fish into pieces. This is really enough fish for both pans, but you can either cut it into pieces about this big, or you can take those exact same pieces and cut them in half. It depends how you like it. Sometimes people, when it's for appetizers, they use smaller pieces, and sometimes they use bigger pieces. The main thing that I like to have is kind of thick pieces. I don't want the really flat, thin ones, because there's no fish by the time you cook it. There's hardly anything left. So this is sizzling for just, I'll let it go for another half a minute or so. And I would say at this point, it's not on high, it's sort of like on medium high. And then it's sizzled a little bit, and I'm going to take the pieces and one by one, just put them around the pan.
And Sharon, I see you've removed the skin from the salmon.
Oh yeah, it came this way. Some people like to have the skin on. I personally don't. I think it kind of has a little fishy taste to it when you do it that way.
And do you have a preference of salmon over other fish? Do you have a particular type of salmon that you like to use?
Well, I'm a Seattle girl, and I like salmon, and so I've only done it with salmon. And I just get, this happens to be Atlantic salmon. Some people will only use wild-caught king salmon. It's just your preference. One thing I don't use is sockeye, because I think sockeye salmon is very dry. Okay, so now I put the salmon in, and I'm going to put in the equivalent of about 1 lemon. I put about, this is 5 lemons in here, so I'm gonna just pour a little bit of lemon juice on it, and then I'm going to take some water, and I'm gonna put enough water on it just to cover. I'm gonna get some more water. I'll be right back. Okay. Just enough water to just barely cover it. I'm going to turn it up a little bit, and then I'm going to take some salt and pepper. And this is where there's not really an exact measurement, but I'm going to roughly say maybe a teaspoon of salt. This is regular table salt. Put it on, maybe it's less than a teaspoon. And then I'm going to take a little bit of pepper. Just a little tiny bit of pepper. And then I'm gonna let it come to a slight boil. And once it does that, I'm gonna cover it right now, just so it'll go a little bit quicker. But I'm gonna let it come to a boil, and then I'm gonna turn it down and simmer it. And usually I simmer it for about 10 or 15 minutes. And while it's simmering, I get the next part ready. But today, just for time's sake, while it's doing its simmering, I'm going to show you how to make the con tomat. Right now, we're waiting. You know what they say, a watch pot never boils. While it's doing that, I'm just going to move it over a little bit, and then I'm going to get my next pan here. Can you see the pan? Or do I need to put it down a little bit?
Put it down a little. Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. While this is cooking, I'm going to make my tomat. And I'm going to, again, take my next head of Italian parsley. And I'm going to...
Can I do anything instead of parsley? If I don't like parsley, is there another vegetable I could use?
I have never used anything else. Somebody recently told me that they put in celery. I can't vouch for it, but that's what I heard from a reliable source. And
I've heard cilantro being used too.
Well, you're talking to a person that does not like cilantro.
Yeah,
so,
me neither. I'm big into parsley as a cilantro substitute at the best of times.
Right. And cilantro is one of those things that either you love or you hate. So I can't talk for cilantro, but somebody once asked me if you can use regular parsley. And I suppose you could, but I'm just telling you the recipe that I learned. And I like the taste of Italian parsley much better.
And Sharon, who did you learn from? Who was your inspiration for learning Sephardic food?
Two people that I learned from. One of them was from my mother-in-law, Malka Adato, Allah Shalom. She made hers a little different than what I'm going to show you today, because she used a little bit of flour to thicken hers up. I don't do that. And I also learned from Wendy Ben Susan. She taught me, she gave me the recipe, and I have been practicing it over the years, and now I'm pretty comfortable with it. So, let me just show you this part over here. This is just starting to come to a little bit of a boil. So I'm going to lower the heat and just let it go for, 10 minutes or so. Okay, back to tomat. Now I'm gonna pour a little bit of oil, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. On bottom of this pan, same process. I'm going to turn on the burner, let it get a little hot. And while it's doing that, in a minute I'm going to put the parsley in to let it do its thing. I'm going to open up, this is a can of good old Hunt's tomato sauce. Now on the recipe that I sent out, I wrote 2 cans of the tomato sauce, but it just depends on how big your pan is. So I'm gonna put this in here so it gets going. Okay. Let that for a minute. Yes. And then while it's doing its thing, I wanted to tell you a couple short stories about some learning process of an Ashkenazi to Sephardic cooking. When I first learned how to do this Huevo Limon, you'll see it when we do it, it's a little bit tricky because you have to be shaking a pan and pouring things one from the other. And I used to have a second person help me because I couldn't do all the things by myself. And then as time went on and I became more Spartacized, I was able to do it by myself. And I thought, like, wow, I should get a certificate of recognition for something like that. And then now I could even talk on the phone and do it at the same time. So I'm pretty proud of myself. Anyhow, so here we are now. Our parsley is just about ready.
Sharon, you mentioned the Hunt's tomato sauce. Can you use plain canned tomatoes instead?
I have never done it, so I suspect you probably can if you like that consistency. But this is how I learned it, and this I actually learned from my mother-in-law and nobody else. So, all right. So this is, keep the questions coming though.
Susan's telling us that you can use dill instead of or in addition to parsley as well.
Okay, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to put these pieces in just like I did with the other fish here. And these pieces, as you can see, are a little smaller for no reason at all, just that they are. I don't know how to make a small amount. It just doesn't happen. So I'm making a large amount today, and we'll probably be eating fish for the next 2 weeks. All right. And then we're going to, got it. I am going, just a moment. Let me fill this with water. I'm going to pour the tomato sauce over. And I'm going to put a little bit of water, not too much. That was probably about a cup. It just depends how thick you want it. And for what the amount that I have, I think I'm just going to use 1 can. And again, I'm going to put a little salt and pepper. If you want to add other seasonings, you're welcome to, like the dill works, you know, other seasonings. I just know in the Adatto home, there's some people that are very picky about their seasonings, so I try to keep it as simple as possible so everybody will enjoy it. And this I'm going to cover, and you basically let this cook for 15 minutes or so, and that's it for tomat. It's the easiest thing. There's some people that I know, and my mother-in-law occasionally did this too, that would put it in a pan, cover it, and put it in the oven for 20 minutes or so. You can do it either way. I just find this is pretty simple, and just let it go. So that's the tomat. I'm just going to check on this and see how we're doing. It's looking good. So
Sharon, can you put it in the freezer after you've made it?
You know, with the tomat, I would say you probably could, but with, excuse me for a second, but with the Huevo Limon, I'm not sure how that would freeze. I don't think that would freeze very well. If somebody has done that and they have made it work, go for it and let us know. But I don't think that consistency works.
Yeah,
so well.
I'd be worried about freezing either of them, but I agree with you. I think the con tomat would probably freeze better.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. In our house, we pretty much, especially the Huevo Limon, we finish it so quickly that it doesn't have much time to be frozen. All right. Now
And
we're
Sharon,
going
can you tell us when you would serve this type of meal? You're saying it would be an appetizer at the seder, or would it be a daytime meal? When would you use it?
In general, in my in-laws' home, it was a specialty for. I mean, the Huevo Limon really was a special, and tomat specialty for the holidays like Rosh Hashanah or Pesach. In our home now, I make it frequently and serve it on Shabbat often. And we enjoy it, and it's not so hard to make, and so it's a really, really nice appetizer. But I know traditionally many people use it for the holidays and serve it at that point. Okay, can we go on to the next part?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we're going to do the fun part, and that is making the Huevo Limon sauce. And I've gotten a lot of people calling me to share their wisdom and making sure that I don't forget certain things when I'm teaching it. So I appreciate it. Lily DeJean and John Calvo, they said, don't forget to shake. So you'll see when we get to this part, I'm listening to you guys. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some huevos, some eggs, and I usually use about 5 eggs for this. So I'm going to okay, 1 egg. Usually I put it in one of these and check it to make sure there's no blood spots, and pour it in you want to make sure that the bowl that you're putting it in is a heat-proof bowl. And because we're going to be putting some of the liquid from here, which is really hot, into here. And if it's not a heat-proof bowl, it's not going to work. And that I speak from experience about the not working part. Okay, so here's egg number 2. Egg number 3. Egg number 4. And last but not least, egg number 5. All right. And the next part's really, really important. I have a whisk and I whisk it. And one thing that I've actually perfected, especially even over the last few months, and the reason I perfected this is when I was watching Sharon Babani do her cooking when she was making a Peshcado, And I saw that she didn't just beat her eggs for 10 seconds. She was beating her eggs for a long time. And what I realized is that the more that you beat your eggs, the smoother it's going to be. One thing I learned about the difference between Sephardic and Ashkenazic cooking is that Ashkenazic cooking is what I call one bowl, one pot kind of cooking. Is that we put some potatoes in and we put some eggs in and salt and pepper, and then we put it in a pan and stick it in the oven. Sephardic cooking is every individual thing takes time, and you have to pinch things and you have to beat things for a long time and you have to shake the pan. It's very, very time consuming, but the results are well worth the time that's put in. So here I am, beating, beating, beating. We're getting close. The next thing I'm going to do, now that I've beaten them pretty well, is I'm going to take more lemon juice. And this is where I put in probably the equivalent of 2 to 3 lemons, depending on the size of your pan. So I'm going to pour it in. And I'm going to beat it some more. So it's really, really mixed together nicely.
Ma, is there any reason to save any lemon juice or just
Yeah,
throw it
because
up?
I have to put some in the tomat. That's why there's a reason.
Oh, okay, fine. So I'm only making limon. I should just put it all in.
That's it. Yes.
Right.
And since you mentioned that, I'm going to pour a little bit of that in with the tomat while it's cooking. It's cooking too high. Okay. So here we are, beating it for another minute. And let me grab. So the next thing, now that we've beaten it, and this is the part where you really have to watch carefully, and because this is what we call the make it or break it part with Huevo Limon. It's been cooking now for a few minutes. I'm going to remove the lid. And I'm going to make sure that the heat is on very, very low. And by the way, I'm looking at my fish, and you can see it's like a little bit, it's lost that dark pinkish color, so I know that it's pretty well cooked through. I'm just getting my things ready here. So the first thing, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do first, and then I'm going to do it. I'm going to take, while I'm beating constantly, I'm going to take some of the hot sauce and put it in here and beat it some more and put some of it in. And remember, don't ever stop beating. And then once I do that, and it's well mixed, I'm going to slowly pour it in the pan while I'm shaking the pan. Got that? Shake the pan. And then...
Keep stirring, Sharon.
Huh?
Keep stirring.
Oh, you haven't done it yet. and then I actually set a timer for 5 minutes, and I shake the pan for 5 minutes. So, are we ready? Let's see, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to, while I'm beating, and here we go. I'm taking some of the hot sauce, slowly pour it in while I'm beating. Slowly pour it in, beat, beat, beat. Don't stop. Don't even stop for a minute. And maybe put like 5 spoonfuls in there. And while I'm doing that, now I'm going to let go, and I'm going to gently pour it in while I'm shaking the pan. Shake, shake, shake. And never, ever stop. And I'm going to put my timer on 5 minutes. Oops. Put it on 5 minutes. Larry's going to help me with that. And keep shaking. And what happens when you don't shake is it turns into a cottage cheese kind of mixture, which is not really so pleasant. And so by shaking it, you're letting the egg mixture mix in, and so it doesn't turn into scrambled eggs. And that's what I'm going to do for the next 5 minutes. While I'm doing it, I wanted to share a couple of fun stories that happened to me. One of them is the famous Adatto lemon juice story, which some of you may have heard, but when I was first learning how to cook, my mother-in-law, Allah Shalom, used to have a cooking session with all of her sisters. They were the Aguado girls. And the Aguado, my mother-in-law was an Aguado and she married an Adato. But the Aguado sisters used to oftentimes cook together and prepare things together. So I was the young, the new bride who was trying to learn some new tricks here. And so but they would never really let me do anything too important at the beginning. It was mostly just watch what was going on. And so I, used to wash dishes and cut up parsley and things like that. But I was never really allowed at the beginning, of course, to touch anything. And we were making yapraks, which is the stuffed grape leaves. And I remember, so I was busy washing dishes and just keeping everything nice and clean to keep everybody happy. And I had this big bowl of this dirty water, which I saw, and I just dumped it out. Well, I didn't know exactly what it was. And they had spent about an hour squeezing lemons, fresh lemons, and they put it all in one bowl, and I dumped the bowl. And it was not a really pleasant day for me as the new bride learning from them. But now we joke about it. I can talk about it without crying. But at that time, it was kind of something we all remembered. So that's something that we talk about in our family all the time. But anyway, let's see how we're doing here. So I don't know if you can see, it's starting to get a little bit thicker. This doesn't get thick, and that's why I think my mother-in-law used to either put in a little bit of flour or potato starch in it, because she liked it really, really thick. But I have found that this works really well. And I have to switch hands because my right hand is numb. But just keep shaking and shaking and shaking.
Is your temperature still on low?
Mine is, at this point, is very, very low.
Okay.
It's on the lowest.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. You don't want it to be too high. I should have said that. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm checking out the tomat also while we're doing it. That's looking good. And by the time we're done with this, there'll be 2 full pans of fish. So if anybody in Seattle wants to come over and pick up some fish, just let me know. We got it ready for you.
Sharon,
By
I'm
the way,
coming for lunch.
anytime. I don't know, but I know that there are people from all over the country, maybe even the world, watching this, but we had a major, major snowstorm in Seattle over Shabbat. So I was gonna cancel the program because of snow, and then I realized it's Zoom. We don't need to cancel any programs. So there are advantages to this this time of our lives that we're going through. Anybody else, any questions?
Yeah, there was a question whether you could stir it rather than shaking it.
I don't think you'll get the same effect. You could try, but I just find that the shaking it kind of gets the whole pan doing it all at the same time. So my timer, by the way, has 1 minute left. And it's looking good. I don't see a whole lot of kernels in there. Every once in a while, you'll see 1 or 2, but this one looks pretty good, pretty good. And I wanted to also share that some people serve this warm and some people serve it cold. We tend to serve it room temperature. So if you make it ahead of time, and I just usually, put it in the refrigerator, and then maybe an hour or so before it's time to serve, just take it out and leave it at room temperature. And it's really delicious. Dunk a little bit of challah in it with the sauce, or the caldo as they called it, or caldo, depending where you're from. And let's see, oh, there's the timer. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off. And again,
Sharon, was there a preference over a nighttime meal or a daytime meal for this dish?
We do it for the nighttime meal. I'm going to remove it from the heat because my burner stays a little hot. Usually we do it as an appetizer for the nighttime meal, but if there's leftover, we oftentimes serve it during the day as well.
That's what I thought. I normally have it for Friday night, but you could definitely do this for lunch as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Since it's served at room temperature.
yeah. And voila, that's really it. The main thing after that is to remove it from the heat and then just let it cool down completely. Don't start messing around with it. And if you want to put it in the refrigerator, wait till it's way cooled down before you do it. This is, if you can see, the tomat is also done. And I'm going to turn it off and just let it cool down. And that's about it. In half an hour, you could make 2 sets of fish, and it's so much easier. A lot of people think that the Peshcado con Huevo y Limon is really difficult. I find it pretty simple. Just remember to shake, shake, shake. That's the main thing. Any other questions?
I think that's it. I'm just explaining that with the whole reason for the shaking is so it doesn't become scrambled eggs.
Good deal.
Correct. Yes, because that's kind of yucky. And we have, the first few times I made it, it did come out like that. But I think that, you know, you get good at it and it's really not hard. Just got to concentrate on not always keeping things moving from the beating to the shaking.
Okay, lots of comments saying that you rock and amazing and thank you, and they don't want everything to curdle. What else have I got here? Can you show your consistency again? Can you zoom in on that con Huevo limon?
Well, let me lift up the pan to the no, leave it there. Let me lift up the pan, and it's just slightly, it's very watery, but it's just got a slight thickness to it. So that's what it is. And also when it gets cooler and you put it in the refrigerator, it gets a little bit thicker at that point.
And can you show us the con Tomat?
I certainly can. Hold on, I'll be right there.
And Sharon, what's your preference? Con Tomat or con Huevo y Limon?
I'm a Huevo y Limon girl, but I like them. I love them both. But there's something special about the lemon one because it's such a different taste than something that I grew up with. And I've acquired a taste for lemon since I've become converted to the Spartic world. I love lemony things. So I think my preference is lemon.
We can have it several days later.
All right, any more questions for Sharon? What someone said if they want to make it thicker. If they want to make it thicker, they can add the flour.
What I would do if you want to make it thicker, then you take some flour, mix it with some cold water first in a bowl, then add some of the hot sauce to that, keep stirring it, and then you can pour that in. I have never done it, but I know that if you want to do it, that's the way to do it. If you just put the flour straight in, it's going to get clumpy and it won't. So you have to do the same kind of a thing where you have to mix it and gradually add the hot water to it and then pour it back in.
Okay, and Jack Shalom would like you to do some delivery today.
No problem, no problem. Uber Eats right here.
All
Jack,
right.
you're right over anytime.
On behalf of everyone, I want to thank Sharon for doing this wonderful demonstration, and you'll be able to find this video along with all our other cooking videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Sharon.